First, we do apologize for the few minutes that have passed by the hour of 10. But well, here we are, and we want to appreciate you for keeping it to Church of Uganda Family TV. This is the Uganda we want. I always say, we always have that vision of a nation, of a place, of a community that you all want to be in. So here we are envisioning in a country that could be peaceful, very peaceful, the country that has systems that are very accessible, everything that is good. That is the Uganda we want. So that could be the little detail about this program here. But of course, it is a partnership between Church of Uganda Family TV and the Interreligious Council of Uganda. Now today, we are going to be looking at responsible enjoyment of rights and freedoms. We have been talking about rights and freedoms in a number of occasions. Mostly those who watch Good Morning Family, we have that slot that tells us to know your rights. Well, so here we are going to be elaborating more of that. And of course, to discuss this in this context, first with me here is Council John Osapir. Of course, the very appropriate person to discuss rights and freedoms here in our nation. He is the IRCU Manager, Legal Advocacy and Partnerships. You're most welcome, Council.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here this morning.
Yes.
And I hope we'll have a good moment with our viewers and listeners wherever. And of course, I encourage them to follow us on YouTube and other social media platforms so that we can have this conversation going on. Yes.
And that is a very big call, actually. You're going to be part of this discussion. You can later on call in, but also there is a YouTube link, so go to our YouTube and make sure you share your comments. Of course, Council here will be able to respond to you. Now, first and foremost, what can we understand by the rights and freedoms in the Ugandan context?
Now, within the Ugandan context, first of all, rights are entitlements of individuals, but also because of our membership to the United Nations framework, we've extended these rights. Now we have environmental rights, we have economic rights, and of course the most outstanding, the political and civil rights guaranteed within our constitution. So when we talk about human rights, we are talking about entitlements of individuals. And these rights were introduced to Uganda through our very, very outstanding and outspoken, I should say, Constitution of Uganda, the 1995 Constitution of Uganda, that guarantees these fundamental freedoms. And when you look at Chapter 4 of the 1995 Constitution, this chapter introduces the concept of human rights. And it goes on to list these rights. For example, the right to life, the right to freedom from torture, cruel and inhuman treatment, freedom to equality, and many other freedoms listed. Of course, the right to education, the right to form a family, the right to freedom of association. There are many, many rights in the Constitution. And suffice to note is that these rights are not guaranteed. Rather, they are not supposed to be, provided to us by the state. These rights are provided to us by God. Because these rights are inherent. They come from the fact that we exist. And so the state has all duties to ensure that these rights are protected, these rights are promoted, and these rights are implemented. Exactly.
Wow, that's very interesting. And what are some of the fundamental rights?
Now, as already mentioned, we have categories. We have the first class of rights, what we call the civil and political rights. And the civil and political rights, these are rights to, for example, principles of democracy, where you have the right to vote, where you were entitled to vote for a leader of your choice. And of course, our constitution emphasizes, universal suffrage. And, you have other rights, other civil rights. For example, freedom to your liberty in terms of liberty to speak, liberty to associate with others, even the liberty to own property, but that would be an economic right. And so the second class of rights is the economic, social, and cultural rights. And we are told there was politics there. First of all, when the UN proposed the civil and political rights, the other countries that were basically following the Marxist theories and you look at the USSR, the countries under the Soviet Union, that those countries that follow communism, or rather, yes, communism actually, those countries said, for us, we don't know these political rights, So the legal framework has had to develop so that we now have the cultural rights guaranteed, the right to belong to a culture, the right to exercise your culture, and I think that's why government comes in to support issues of culture.
Yes.
But also you have social rights, the right to socialize with others. The right to engage with others, either through peaceful demonstrations. That right is also guaranteed in our constitution, that you have a right to freely express yourself through a peaceful demonstration. Of course, later on, the police came up with a few things that you remember. We had the Public Order Management Act, which was declared unconstitutional by the courts of law. But today, if you're to exercise that right, of course you have to notify the police. And I think the idea there is to provide you with security. But that right has been abused extensively by, of course, the law enforcement agencies. We've seen instances where people are allowed to go either to demonstrate or even to lawfully assemble for a certain cause. And they will be pushed out of that place, or they will even be denied the venue. So that's one of the rights that have been affected so much. And then we have the other economic rights, and the social rights also, the right to belong to a family, the right to form a family, the right to marry, to find a wife or find a husband. And our constitution is clear. Marriage is between a man and a woman. The constitution is very clear. And also the constitution is clear to the extent that it says marriage is for those above the age of 18. So if you are watching and you're below 18, you're not supposed to indulge in issues of relationships and marriage. Otherwise, that will be early marriage. And then I think we've exhausted them. We talked about the civil and political rights, but we've also talked about the rights in relationship to our culture, rights in relationship to the economy or economics. Those are some of the rights.
Wow, that's very interesting. And now, when do rights become absolute or not absolute? Because there is a misunderstanding there. Some people say you have rights, but they are not completely yours.
Now, first of all, Article 43 of the Constitution provides and creates limitations on enjoyment of rights, especially in respect to the Constitution says, while you enjoy your rights, you shall not prejudice the rights of others. So one, the Constitution tends to create a balance between the enjoyment of personal rights or private rights with the rights of others, but also the social good in respect to others. But also secondly, it tends to create limitations in respect to enjoyment of your rights within the context of the law. That you have to enjoy your fundamental rights within the law. So while you have a right, you are supposed to enjoy that right within the confines of the law. You're not supposed to go outside the law. For example, we were talking about freedom to assemble, lawfully assemble,
yes,
or lawfully demonstrate for a given cause. Or even the freedom to form political parties and belong to a political party and express yourself. Those are freedoms guaranteed. But you must exercise those freedoms within the law. For example, you will not be allowed to run a political party unless that political party has been registered with government, recognized by the state. You are not allowed, while you have a right to run an organization, for example, a CSO, a civil society organization, or an NGO, you will not exercise that right unless you have registered. For example, for non-government organizations, you're supposed to register with the company registry as a company limited by guarantee, and then you're also supposed to register with the NGO bureau. You know, so for you to enjoy rights of formation of associations or organizations, you must do it within the provisions of the law. For you to go to the street and express yourself, you should do it within the provision of the law. For example, notifying. The issue is not to get permission from the police. The issue is to notify the police. And the reason you're notifying the police is that the police should be able to provide security for you. If you found yourself in the street somewhere, or people move to parliament, so you need protection there as you seek to enforce your rights. So the Constitution places limitations to enjoyment of rights within the framework of the law.
Okay.
And that is very, very critical. We should always respect the Constitution. We should always respect the law in itself as we enjoy our rights. And then secondly, we should respect the freedoms of others as we enjoy our rights. For example, if you are, let's say, running a church, for us, we come from the Interreligious Council,
yes,
so we understand the religious institutions better. So if you're running a church and your church is in a residential area, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to regulate the noise, so that this noise does not become a public nuisance. There's something called a public nuisance. A public nuisance is anything that interferes with the rights of the greater public. So you, as you pray, as you do your intercession, you are supposed to put others in contemplation. In law, there is something called the my neighbor principle, and this my neighbor principle was brought up by one of the senior judges in the House of Lords in the UK. And the my neighbor principle, the court was asking, who is my neighbor? And the court responded and said, my neighbor is someone whom I ought to have put in contemplation, so that when I act, in my mind, I know they will be affected by my actions. So your neighbor is someone that could be affected by your actions, whom you have to put in mind as you do a certain act. So that means there has to be a duty of care. There is something called duty of care in law. That if you're driving, are you driving at a speed that you're able to stop if someone crosses in front of you without your notice? That is responsible driving.
Yes.
Will you be able to stop at once in case anything happens ahead of you? So you're supposed to put your neighbor in your mind as you are enjoying your right or as you're doing something. So whether you are riding a car, whether you're riding a motorcycle or you're driving a car, you ought to put others in your mind. That's why the Road and Safety Act now puts in what we call a speed limit. Okay. Why do we have a speed limit? You have a speed limit because the law is protecting the people who are using the same road with you, so that if there is an emergency, you'll be able to stop, you know. Yeah. We also have pedestrian lanes in town, in the city here. And I think we need more of those in the city, because given the population that we have in the city. And the motorcycles are not supposed to pass in the pedestrian lanes. But unfortunately, we don't see that happening. So I think that has to be enforced, and probably the protection has to be stronger, so that it's not easy for a motorist to actually enter into the pedestrian lane. So the reason they put the pedestrian lane there is to protect the people who are moving on foot, you know. So you can see the enjoyment of rights is something that is so diverse, you know. So as you enjoy your rights, you ought to put others in your mind. You ought to respect the rights of others. And I think for noise, which is our biggest challenge here today, the bars make noise, the churches will make noise, even the mosques will make noise. Yeah, but we have to go by the NEMA standards. Of course, we had challenges with the NEMA standards, because for us, we thought maybe they were made in New York and not within the Ugandan context. Because even if you place here your machine and you're not making noise, the machine will be able to capture the noise outside, and you'll actually find that you are not meeting the noise standards within the law. So probably that is also an issue where there's need for revision, because some religious leaders had been, they were being arrested. And so we had a dialogue with NEMA on that issue, but also the Ministry of Environment on that issue. And we hope that probably the noise levels will have to be revised. But I think we are getting there, especially when it comes to this public pollution through noise and so on. Okay. Yes.
Now, I wanted us to revisit, maybe we use it as a case study, the previous, can I call it, demonstration walk to Parliament. The kind of interventions that were made, were they against the rights of those that wanted to exercise their demonstration, a whole sort of peaceful demonstration, because for them they had termed it as a peaceful one, but the forces had a different aspect of it.
Which one? Which particular demonstration?
Walk to Parliament and against corruption and
against corruption. Yes. The MK movement.
No. The previous one. The previous one before the MK one.
Okay. Yes. Now, first of all, you know, because we are in the heart of the city, first of all, I don't want to be in the mind of the police. But let me speak now as a lawyer. Okay. And as a legal professional, the right to freedom of expression in respect to a lawful assembly is guaranteed within the Constitution. And people have the right to exercise that right. But as we said, as you enjoy your rights, you have to put others in contemplation as you are enjoying your rights. I think the worry of the security agencies is that sometimes they can actually be overwhelmed by these numbers. And you know, in a demonstration, sometimes people have different motives. You may have the motive for you want to express yourself. The other ones have a motive of looting property or destroying property. So there has to be a balance, that as you're expressing yourself, there has to be security provided. And you know, you have to express to the law enforcement agencies on exactly what you're going to do in that demonstration. For example, you would say, we are going to hand over a petition to the Speaker of Parliament. So Parliament has to be notified that on such and such a day, you will be handing over a petition to Parliament.
Okay.
And then you will request the police for security so that people do not misuse your demonstration as an opportunity to break the law. Yeah? So it is in order that you notify the security agencies to provide security. And in any case, if you did that and the police did not provide security, or the police went on to disperse these peaceful demonstrators, you can actually go and enforce these rights in the courts of law. Yes, and the courts of law, I believe, will be able to uphold your right to peacefully express yourself. Yeah. So, of course, sometimes the security forces have gone overboard. And it's like a war. It's like a conflict.
There are times when medical intern doctors are...
I remember. I remember that time.
And you see the force being used is quite...
And there has to be a balance between force used in law enforcement and the actual force that is supposed to be used, so that you don't use a lot of force. The law says you're supposed to use reasonable force. But things of getting people, throwing them on cars, we've seen all these things, and these are excesses by law enforcement agencies. They are not in order, they are not right, and they are in violation of our constitution. Because we've seen young ladies going to the street and they are just carrying placards. But the manner in which they will be arrested is demeaning, is unconstitutional, is cruel and inhuman, and actually degrading. Yeah, so the manner in which the law enforcement agencies enforce, the law in responding to these rights is very, very appealing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and now here's my question: do Ugandans understand their rights and freedoms?
Now that's a question of the day, I think. Do Ugandans understand their rights? First of all, I would say yes and no. Given the number, the number of illiteracy in respect to rights, but also illiteracy in respect to education. Yes. How many people can read and write? That's number one. Because some of these rights come through enlightenment and education. That's very critical. But number two, the Uganda Human Rights Commission has a responsibility to lead in civic education. But as I said earlier in one of the programs here, that the office is currently, of course, understaffed. You have only regional offices. I think there's a regional office in Jinja, there's a regional office in Soroti, there's a regional office in Mbarara, a regional office in Gulu. I'm not sure about Fort, but it should be there. I'm not sure about Kabale. So you can look at the distribution of these regional offices for the Human Rights Commission. Yet the Commission is bestowed with the responsibility of educating citizens about their rights. It is their responsibility to promote and protect these human rights. So how are they going to promote? Because you can only promote if you're able to educate people so that people become aware of their rights. I don't know how busy the human rights, even the tribunal at the Human Rights Commission, how busy it is, but also our enforcement of human rights. Maybe someone needs to do research to find out how are people enforcing these rights, but also going to the court to interpret these rights in the courts of law. So when you talk about awareness of rights, probably in terms of percentage, I could give it a percentage of 30% out of 100. And that is not so good for us, you know. So yes, government has a responsibility to also interpret the laws so that these laws are in the local languages. But I don't know if it's a resource problem or if it's a priority problem.
Okay.
Even the constitution has not been translated in major languages. You know, I think we have just a few versions of the constitution, and of course it's the role of the Law Reform Commission to actually ensure that, you know, these laws are put in a language that can be understood by all. Yeah, so if we are still struggling with issues of interpreting these laws, putting these laws into you know, the language that is understood by everyone, then we have a challenge. But because the issue of promotion of rights is a partnership between state actors and non-state actors, and the non-state actors are playing a critical role, especially the civil society organizations and the non-government organizations. But again, currently, they are not doing much because of the donor fatigue, but also the lack of funding. You know that government closed the Democratic Governance Facility, which was a basket for the European Union countries to support issues of governance, the rule of law, issues of social justice within Uganda. But that was closed, and since then, we've not seen a revised framework like the Democratic Governance Facility. Of course, there were issues because I think there was mistrust between government and DGF, because government thought that the DGF was used as a vehicle to promote, you know, financial terrorism and other things, and funding of dissident activities within the civil society organizations. And so I think government demanded for a more inclusive funding framework where government is represented and the civil societies are represented. But unfortunately, we've not seen this actualized. And so most of the organizations are currently struggling in terms of doing their work, in terms of promoting these rights and educating the public. Yeah, but they are doing some work in the communities in respect to educating communities about their rights, and I think it should be a continuous responsibility.
Now, what cost or what impact, what implication do you think this illiteracy about the rights and freedoms, what cost do you think it has over the human rights sector?
Now, first of all, if you do not know your rights, it means you cannot enforce those rights. And which is a violation of our law, but also a violation of the international framework, because these rights are supposed to be accessible by all. These rights are supposed to be enjoyed by all. And so in instances where people do not understand these rights, or people are not aware of these rights, there's a challenge. And you know, rights are, in our last discussion we said rights are connected to development. In countries where human rights are not fully guaranteed, economic progress may not be experienced as it is supposed to be. So the same thing here, if people do not know their rights, then the progress in terms of their development in respect to finances, progress in respect to business will not be actualized, because one, people will not know they have a right to access a certain market to sell. People will not know they have a right to, you know, negotiate in business. You know, when you're talking about negotiations and business, people will not understand they have those rights. If you're talking about voting, people will not be able to vote and therefore make the right decisions in terms of having the right leaders in place. They will not be able to do that if they do not understand their right to vote, or they are unable to exercise that right because of their ignorance in respect to the law. Okay. But also, if their rights are violated, for example, women who are victims of violence against women and children, they are victims of gender-based violence. What will happen? They will not be able to report violations. So you have many cases going on unreported, yeah, or you even have many cases of sexual nature going on untried in the courts of law, because people do not know their rights, in respect to protection from violence, or in respect to reporting issues to do with violence. Yeah, so you can see it negatively impacts the country in terms of the well-being of people, but also in terms of the welfare of people, and in terms of the economic development of the people, if they do not understand those very significant rights.
Well,
yeah.
Don't we have a big role to play?
We do have a big role to play, and I wish this can also be one of the priority areas, so that there is adequate resource allocation to agencies like the Human Rights Commission. Of course, agencies like the Equal Opportunities Commission still need to exist. There was an issue where they were merging these agencies.
Yes.
And we thought that merging of the Equal Opportunities Commission with the Uganda Human Rights Commission would actually cause a lot of challenges, because the Equal Opportunities is there to ensure that every Ugandan enjoys the same opportunities with another Ugandan, and that's their responsibility, and they're supposed to report on that, while the Human Rights Commission is there to ensure the protection of the law. So we need to ensure that these agencies are well funded, but also secondly, we need to ensure that people understand the roles of these agencies. For example, what is the role of the judiciary? The role of the judiciary is to interpret, but also to enforce human rights. Okay. You know that the Constitutional Court has jurisdiction to interpret interpret the Constitution, but also, create a framework where these rights can actually be protected, these rights can be upheld, and these rights can be observed. Okay. So it is within their responsibility to make sure that the Constitution is well understood in terms of interpreting those rights, and ensure that those rights are not violated. Okay. So we have a responsibility to support these institutions that engage on issues of human rights, to ensure that they are well funded, to ensure that they are resourced, to ensure that they have the right human resource, they have the right people working there, to ensure that these institutions are able to investigate, because we've also had reports, especially from the members of the opposition, where they have actually complained that some of the issues were reported to the commission. You remember they were talking about they called them political prisoners. The people who were incarcerated in connection to the past election. Of course, fortunately, those who acknowledge the offense,
Okay.
those who acknowledge the offense were able to get their freedom. But we also have people who are still there. But also, they talked about people whose whereabouts were not known. But to date, we've not seen a comprehensive report from the Uganda Human Rights Commission in respect to those allegations.
Okay.
So I think it would be important that the commission is empowered to do its work, and the commission works with independence to do its work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very great. We are going in for a very short break and be able to return with more of this discussion. But I believe you're now seeing what you're supposed to be doing as a person, but also those in authority, what they should be doing to make sure that we enjoy our rights and freedoms very, very well. A short break.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Oh yes, welcome back. You are watching the Uganda We Want here on Church of Uganda Family TV, a partnership with the Interreligious Council of Uganda. Today, we are looking at the responsible enjoyment of rights and freedoms here in our nation, Uganda. And with me to discuss all this is Council John Osapir, the manager legal advocacy and partnerships at IRCU. Now, we have talked about a number of things. I believe you're following keenly. Please, we shall be able to read your comments, or we shall be able to speak to a few of you when time allows, when that will be in the very last segment. But now, I want to go back to Council, and we talk about balancing these rights and freedoms. And specifically, how can the rates be balanced suiting to the national or individual standards of our nation here, Uganda?
Now, first of all, there are two things. You know, the whole issue of balancing of rights creates a limitation in the enjoyment of rights.
Oh.
And this limitation on enjoyment of rights is supposed to be justifiable and is supposed to be exercised within democratic principles and democratic means.
Okay.
So in other words, if you put a limitation to the enjoyment of these rights, it is supposed to be within the confines of the law. So there are two things. There is individual responsibility, but there is also state responsibility. Of course, there are instances where the state has gone overboard in respect to restrictions of certain rights. Talk about the freedom of association and the closing of social media platforms like Facebook. And of course, this happens almost every time we are getting into an election. So they do this to limit the enjoyment of that particular right. But that is not within the law. It's not within the context of the law. Because when you're talking about freedom of association, you don't give it with one hand and withdraw it with the other hand. So you leave people to freely engage in a free society. That's number one. So government will always come in to enforce these limitations. But in most cases, their enforcement of the limitations is, in most cases, in breach of the law itself. But also there are instances where government has actually come in to regulate, and it is within the law. For example, if you're talking about pornography, the government has, come in to check. They've established the anti-pornography committee, and they I don't know whether they've now restricted access to certain sites, but also things like censoring the media content on television to protect young children. I think that's a good contribution from the side of government to ensure that there's protection of children, but there's also protection of the family. If the media content is censored in respect to morality, not censoring media content in respect to politics or civil rights.
Yeah.
So that is fundamental. So that's one arm of limiting or ensuring that these rights are balanced. While you have a right to access media content, you don't have a right to watch what is not morally ethical or what is not morally right. That's why some songs have been banned from the public domain and from the domain of the media, because government wants to protect children or they want to protect the family. But also we've seen instances where there is a ban on some political actors who are actually musicians, to ensure that either their music is not played or they are not given the freedom to carry out a concert. They will somehow fail the concert in a certain way, using the law, of course. And that is now the disadvantage, the worst side of it. But the good side of it is when rights are balanced to protect the social good.
Okay.
To ensure that there's morality in the public. So you actually need the actors. You need civil society. You need individuals. You also need government to ensure that there is a balance in enjoyment of these rights. And sometimes you need to check individuals. You also need to check government whether they are actually violating the rights of other people. Yeah, so the issue of enjoyment of rights is two-phase. It can be at individual level where the Constitution places on you responsibility to ensure that you enjoy your rights while respecting the rights of others. While you have the freedom to express yourself either through a lawful assembly or through a peaceful demonstration, you are not supposed to violate the rights of others as you engage in your rights. So you're not supposed to destroy property, you're not supposed to loot, to take what does not belong to you. You're supposed to do it within the confines of the law. You are supposed to notify the lawful agencies. So that is at individual level. Then at state level, the state also comes to regulate issues of pollution, both private pollution, but also, environmental pollution. Yeah, so the state will come in. And then, of course, the state will come in to restrict sometimes your right to freely, engage with others through a lawful assembly and so on. Okay. With the purpose and the motive of protecting the common good or public security or public safety. Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can we also talk about personal freedoms and society order? Where do we draw the lines?
Personal freedom and society order, of course, while you have freedoms guaranteed to you within the law, we have a responsibility to ensure that while we enjoy those freedoms, we do not interfere with the order of the society or the order of the public. For example, while you have a right to a certain road, yeah, you are not allowed to block the road just because the road reaches your home or passes your home. You don't have that right. Otherwise, you'll be disorganizing other people who are also supposed to enjoy the very road that you are using. So there's a responsibility that while you are enjoying, for example, a public good which is used by everybody, you allow others also the freedom to use it like you're using it.
Okay.
By ensuring that, you know, if it is, for example, a swimming pool which is used by the public, you know, you use it and use it in a responsible manner so that other people will also be able to go and then use it in a responsible manner. Okay. So it's very important that as you're enjoying your rights, you don't interfere with public order. You know,
yes.
You don't interfere with public order. You ensure that you enjoy your rights, but while respecting the bigger rights of the bigger public that is around you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting. And now, when it comes to exercising our rights and freedoms as Ugandans, are we doing the right thing, or there is a bit of abuse?
Yes and no. Especially when you get to social media platforms, you can see how young people abuse old people. They will abuse everybody. They will abuse the king of Buganda. They will abuse the Katikiro. They will abuse the archbishop. They will abuse everybody. There's a lot of disrespect going on in these social media platforms, which is very unfortunate. And we have actually missed a step. We are misusing the framework. We are supposed to use that framework for business, for God's sake. Social media actually, if well utilized, can spur trade, both nationally and internationally. But what we see on social media is comedy. What we see on social media is malice. What we see on social media is talking about other people. You know, and they will be on that for a week. So, IRC, you said this, they will be on that for a week. So and so said this, they will be on that for a week. And seemingly, they will not support the good agenda. They are always looking for the wrong agenda. That's what they will be able to support. The same thing actually with media freedom. The media now wants to sell the bad things. They will not sell the good things. Yeah? They will not sell the good things. If you're dressed in a necktie like this, like me here, you're probably not selling. They will sell something else or someone else. So it's a challenge that we are dealing with. And I think we should ask ourselves, what are we doing in respect to promoting national unity, but while using our freedoms? Yesterday, you know, they posted the appointments by HE, the president. I don't know whether they were true, because I'm told 1st April is Fool's Day. But I don't know whether it was true. But they did post the appointments at the ISO, the directors of ISO.
Yes.
And I read through on social media, I was reading the posts of people. And I said, can you imagine? Just from one place, just from one region? You know, that was the conversation. And then I said, but there's a man called Kinyera, who is now the deputy. Kinyera should be someone from the north. And people were not acknowledging that. So you can see the kind of malice that we have in our communications and in our social media platforms. They promote hate speech. You know, they promote. I mean, it is totally regrettable how we are using our so-called freedom to associate and freedom to speak freely. That has been abused. Number two, talking about political freedoms, of course, there's been a lot of restrictions in respect to these freedoms, and these restrictions come from the state, especially the law enforcement agencies like the police, but also the indulging of the military into our politics is also regrettable. And I think we in that way we are violating some of our rights and freedoms. So I think it's important that while we have a right to express ourselves, we have a right to enjoy our freedoms, we should use these freedoms responsibly, not to violate rights of other people, not to promote disunity, not to promote hate speech, but use the platforms that we have, the social media platforms that we have, for the good of the people, to preach unity. We should use it for economic reasons. You know, we should really get there where, you know, young people are able to market some of their businesses through social media. Market cars through social media. We can do a lot with this freedom of expression. Yes.
Okay. And in that regard as well, when it comes to the freedom of expression in relation to the social media use, where is the responsible use and irresponsible use?
The responsible use and irresponsible use is if we use social media. For example, now we are not talking about social media, we are talking about artificial intelligence. Are we using it for research, promoting research? Can we use social media to actually promote research? That is something that is very critical. You know, right now, social media is also evidence used in social media can also now be used in the courts of law. You know, so I think it's important that when we are using social media, we use it for the common good. We use it to connect to the outside world, because we are talking about globalization. We use it to connect to the global world, and we use it for research. We use it for educational purposes. We use it to learn the cultures of other people. You know, you can be here and then learn something in Ghana, learn something in Nigeria. I think that is very commendable. That could be the responsible side of enjoying rights in relation to social media. But where you're using social media to promote, to malice people, where you're using social media to abuse people, where you're using social media to promote hate speech, to promote tribalism and nepotism, I think that is not right. And that is under the bar for us as people with the same blood.
Now, where are we heading? What can be done? Because if you realize, the more we are digitally the more the problems. What should be done? Is it sensitization into the people's minds? What can be done? Because I believe if we are to look into the cases, we have more cases coming out from cyber.
We need to see a lot of dialogue between what I'm talking about is intergenerational dialogue between the old generation and the young people. I think if we can have more of those dialogues, we will be able to manage the social media thing. Why? Because I think the young people need to be helped to understand the big picture and critically understand the good side of social media and how the same can be leveraged on for development. So we need to see a lot of those engagements taking place. The other time when the young people were organizing a march to Parliament on corruption, I think that's what you were asking. They wrote to us as Interreligious Council and they requested us to support them in their endeavors to walk to Parliament. So we said we are inviting you for a meeting so that we can first of all have dialogue and agree, have consensus, build consensus on what we are going to speak out there, or we want to understand your agenda. They told us, for us we are leaderless, for us we are nameless. We don't exist. We cannot come, to your boardroom to have such kind of engagement. Yeah, but I think we should, young people should be open to dialogue. We should be open to opinions of others. That is also another big challenge we see today. We are not able to accommodate the other's opinion. We are not able to, accommodate each other. We are divided along tribal lines, divided along where we come from, divided, those trivial, I call them trivial things, the smaller picture, because at the end of the day we are all Africans. At the end of the day we are all Ugandans. At the end of the day we all need good education, we all need good roads. We all need each other, actually. We intermarry with each other at the end of the day. So I think if we can use social media to promote unity, to celebrate our culture, to celebrate unique things about us, that is the way to go. And that's the right thing to do actually, as a people and as a nation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to moral decay.
Moral decay.
What has happened? Because it seems like young people do not have respect anymore. Regardless of who you are, your state, I will fire you if I have my phone in my hands.
Now,
what has happened?
Now, the breakdown in the family parenting system. You get a child, grows up with a single parent, and this child critically lacks contributions from a male figure in their life. I noted that the children who grow up under single parentage, in most cases, are not like children who grow up with both parents. That's number one. Number two, the breakdown of the family system and the community system of grooming children. Those days, if I committed a crime along the way from school, the people in the village would go to my dad and say, we found John doing this on the road.
And some of them
or rather, he didn't even go to school, or they will beat you up and they will take you to school by force. But today, everybody is on their business. Everyone minds of themselves, which is a big challenge to us. Everyone seems to be pursuing their own agenda. It's not now for the common good. So when you have those systems breaking up, you're no longer your brother's keeper. The system of family has been disintegrated. Young people, we even have families that are child raised families where there is totally no parenting. That's very important. But also today, seemingly young people do not take correction and instruction. And for me, I think that comes from the early age. If they are not able to take correction at the young age, if they are not corrected at the young age, then they will miss up a step in a later stage of their life. They will definitely miss up a step. So I think it's important that when we are parenting, we do it the scriptural way, within the confines of scripture. When we are living, we should inculcate virtues and values of respect into young people. That's very significant. If we want to see a good society and a society where people have morals, it all starts from home. That's where it starts from.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, very interesting insights here indeed. We are going in for another short break and return with more. And now here we are going to be coming for the very last bit of it, so you can be able to send in a message or a comment, and then we shall have Councillor John here respond to you. A short break.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission. This is Church of Uganda Family TV. Enriching lives. Regulated by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Oh yes, thank you so much for keeping it to Church of Uganda Family TV, and we really want to appreciate all of you out there who are following us on different platforms, but also from the mainstream. Now I want to acknowledge Bishop Edward Munene, who is the regional overseer in Busoga region for the born again churches there. We really want to appreciate you so much for the feedback that you're giving in, but also a variety of you there. So just like I told you in this segment, we're going to be bringing in of course your inputs, and then Councillor John here will be able to respond to them. We are discussing responsible enjoyment of rights and freedoms. It is the topic today, and of course we have seen a number of aspects leading to what we are right now. Things have a little bit changed, but how can we change for the good, not change for the bad? You know, when it comes to peaceful demonstrations, when the police advises otherwise, it is going to be a war. So if it is just a matter of understanding, I believe. But well, I'm going to go back to council, and then we speak. And when it comes to exercising over rights, what is our role, we as the citizens, when in case there is a blockage somewhere? Recently we had in 2020 we had a lockdown, and that cut off the freedom of movement. So when state puts up a limitation, what is supposed to be our response?
Now, first of all, the state will put up limitations for different reasons. It could be limitations to protect and promote public health, and the lockdown was justified. That, you know, the president and government generally wanted to protect the bigger population from the effects of COVID-19, but also curtailing the spread of the virus to people. So those lockdowns can always be there. Of course, it was the first time within the history of human life that we actually saw that kind of lockdown. It was new. But of course, government managed it in such a responsible manner. And at the end of the day, we came out with victory. We acknowledge that. So sometimes it can be for the public good. But also sometimes it can be for promoting of public security.
Okay.
And, you know, sometimes they can say you're not allowed to access this area. Or rather, there's a curfew, you're not allowed to move beyond this this time. So I think it's important that, you know, sometimes government comes in, especially when you're talking about enjoyment of these rights.
Okay.
Now, you asked, what are we supposed to do? Especially if there is a restriction, I think, on some of these human rights. First and foremost, we are supposed to use lawful means to enforce our rights. And every Ugandan has a right to make a complaint to the Uganda Human Rights Commission without the use of a legal person. You can actually go to any regional office of the commission and make a complaint that this kind of right is being violated, or that your rights are actually violated, or that you are a victim of violation of your rights. You can report at any regional office. But I would want to appeal to government that let us increase the presence of the Human Rights Commission, just like we also need the presence of the IGG, the Inspectorate of Government, when we talk about anti-corruption. We need this present in districts, so that if you want to report, I don't need to move from Bujiri, where I come from, to go to Jinja to report a matter. You know, I don't need to, if I'm whistleblowing on issues of corruption, I don't need to move from Kamuli and I'm going to report in Jinja, or move from Ntungamo and you're going to report in Mbarara. Who has that transport to put in? You know, that I am just going to file a matter of a human rights violation, or I'm going to report someone for corruption offenses. So I think we need to extend these offices to the local people. We need to make the presence of the commission, you know, more closer to the district areas, so that, yes, we can now report these violations of human rights, but also secondly, we can also report and put our leaders to account, especially on issues of corruption. That's number one. Number two, we have a responsibility of reporting, as I've already emphasized. Number three, we can also enforce these rights in the courts of law. If, you know, in every district there's a magistrate court, while the magistrates do not have jurisdiction to interpret certain rights as rights, they will always refer the matters to the Court of Appeal. They will refer the matters to the Court of Appeal for interpretation, always, to the Constitutional Court for interpretation, always. So we can also go to court and enforce some of these rights. The other thing we can actually do as Ugandans is to peacefully demonstrate, peacefully express ourselves, our discontent. It could be a peaceful march to the district headquarters, like we did with homosexuality. We expressed our rights. Of course, some people were saying, well, you religious institutions, you were only active on homosexuality, you're not active on other things. But I think that is not a balanced opinion. The religious institutions have often talked about the issues that concern the common person in society, issues of economic empowerment, issues of respect of the law, issues of good governance, issues of human rights. We've seen our leaders come out and speak on these issues on a daily basis. But sometimes people expect us to also go to the streets and demonstrate. We don't do that because we are not civil society. But we can speak about those violations. Yes, and I think it's everyone's responsibility to speak up. It's not only for religious leaders to speak up.
Okay. And now when it comes to enforcement, maybe in response to some demonstrations which maybe the police did not find well, the kind of interventions made, what is your input? I
already said that if you want to express your right, especially through a lawful assembly, and there is a restriction by the police, you can actually challenge that. There is what we call judicial review.
Okay.
Judicial review is a process in the High Court that basically challenges the administrative decision of a certain organ.
Okay.
So that decision can be rescinded, can be reversed by the court if the police rejected your application for security. As we said earlier, they are supposed to provide security. They are not supposed to provide authority for you to go and lawfully express yourself in a certain playground or somewhere. Yeah, that's I think that is it in respect to that. Yeah, so you can use lawful means to get the right results. Yeah.
Okay. And then how about the implementation, or how effective are we using these rights?
Implementation of human rights. I think first of all, some of them, they are, as we said, the state plays a big responsibility in implementing these rights. For example, if you talk about the right to education, government has come up with the universal primary education, but also the universal secondary education.
Okay.
So that is one of the ways through which the right to education is implemented and enforced. And of course, you have the government scholarship program, but also now you have the government loan scheme program, where you can actually get a loan and you're able to study. That is very, very, very important. Okay. And then the other thing is talk about the right to health. The hospitals, the education institute, the medical institutions established. So government plays a bigger role. And then, of course, the operation of political parties, the operation of non-government organizations, there's a bigger role there. Of course, when we talk about the operation of CSOs and NGOs, there's a shrinking civic space. There's a lot of monitoring from government in respect to the activities of non-government organizations, and so many endless requirements that CSOs and non-government organizations are supposed to meet when they are registering. And some of those even go to religious institutions. You can imagine asking a church to register as an NGO and then renewing your permit every 5 years. I think that's a violation of the right to freedom to worship. Yes, so some of the rights have actually been restricted. And I think, but we are getting there. I don't think we are doing so bad in respect to issues of human rights. Of course, there are challenges. We've seen issues of arbitrary arrest, arrest without notice, arrest without a police warrant. You are captured like chicken somewhere and thrown in a car and taken to cells. Those are still challenges. And I believe that with time we will get there, where there's respect. When, for example, they come to arrest me as I'm getting out of this studio, you give me a notice, you allow me inform my lawyers that, and then you tell me where you're taking me. So we still have challenges with some of the civic rights, but I think we are also doing well. We are doing well. If it is by percentage, we could say 40%. These rights are being implemented. We'll get there with time.
And maybe as we see to wind up, what are some of the most common violations of rights in Uganda, both by the citizens but also some of the state?
Common violations of rights by the citizens, the misuse of the freedom to speak, and because we mostly the people use this freedom to speak about political leaders and so on, and downgrade them and so on. So misuse of the freedom to speak, but even misuse of the freedom to lawfully assemble, where you have people assembling and they are not respecting the rights of other people. But also the other violation is in line with family and marriage. We have so many, young marriages taking place where young people are actually forced into marriage before they reach their age.
Okay.
That's also a very, very big challenge. In most of our rural areas of Uganda, you have many cases of early marriages and early pregnancies, which is again a violation. And then you have young people who are not in school. They're not in school. They don't want to study. And the parents have not taken responsibility to ensure that these young people go to school, in spite of now government saying there's free education. Because in this era, in this generation, I call it the M7 generation, there is no reason why you should say you're not able to go to school, because there is universal primary education, universal secondary education. And some of us are actually products of these. We started school in a UPE setting, actually, in my village. Yeah, and we are here, very successful. So I think it's possible that someone can study from anywhere and they can make it in life.
Okay.
As long as the person who is studying has a vision and a purpose why they are studying, they will always be successful. So we still have young people who are out of school, and there are many. But also issues of health, no drugs in the hospitals, and yet funding for these drugs are available. So the issue of corruption again there, which is still a challenge in the the achievement of these rights. Yeah, so you have hospitals but without medicine. You have hospitals without medical officers, and yet people are on payroll and they are paid by government to be in the hospitals. They are paid by government to ensure that there is medicine in the hospital. Of course, we are also not doing well because we thought that by now we should have a minimum wage. Let me look at the camera well. By now, we should actually have a minimum wage. Kenya here has a minimum wage. Tanzania has a minimum wage. I will not say Rwanda, because Rwanda is a younger country compared to us. But we need to get there and have a minimum wage where people work and they earn something reasonable to care for their family. Yeah, but you have a lot of people in employment that is not structured, and their employment rights are abused extensively. They have no contract. They do not get NSSF. They are not sure whether they will get next month's salary. Those challenges. So we need to mainstream also the employment sector and have order there. What else? What about national insurance scheme? Today, treating malaria alone will cost you, in a simple hospital, you will spend 150,000. But how many Ugandans, have how many Ugandans can afford that money? If we say almost maybe 70% live under $1, per day, how many will afford to get treatment? So we also advocate, actually, as Interreligious Council, we've been advocating for the national insurance scheme for Ugandans. We've of course advocated also for the minimum wage and other forms of advocacy that we engaged in.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can we look at how the government can promote, the government and civil society can promote responsible citizenship?
Government and civil society promoting responsible citizenship. First of all, there's need for capacity building for influencers, what you call, these could be ambassadors of responsible living.
Okay.
You need to build the capacity of others who will become change agents in the lives of other people. That's very significant.
Okay.
Number two, apart from capacity building and growing a network of influencers and change makers, we need this patriotism thing is a good agenda. I think the office of the president has actually His Excellency has set up a particular department to deal with issues of patriotism. And my sister Helen Seku is the commissioner in charge of patriotism. We were in the same class with Helen at law school. So I think this is a good agenda, and we should bring it down. You know, every school we should see the patriotism clubs, because these patriotism clubs help us to inculcate values of nationalism, values of patriotism in the young people. So we beyond the physical exercises that they take people to do in Chankwanzi, we need to see ideological, you know, orientation of young people in schools on issues of patriotism. We need to see this channeled down, you know, to the lower schools, even primary schools. This issue of patriotism, which is a very good agenda for the country. So I think these are the things that, you know, we need to promote. We need to promote a lot of dialogue as a civil society, but also religious institutions. Promote dialogue on key issues of education, issues of health, issues that affect people, issues that make people not want to be associated with Uganda. There are people who never want to be associated with, to be called Ugandans. You know, those issues of leadership, we should be able to talk about these things, you know, openly, and we work for them, but also work together so that we are able to grow our country together as people.
There is one here who says, don't you think there is a big role to make sure that people know their rights, because some of them are misusing the rights they do not even know?
Exactly. Some are living in ignorance of the law, and unfortunately ignorance of the law has no defense. So there are those who think they are doing the right thing, but actually they are doing the wrong thing, just because they do not know and understand the law. So we need to do a lot of teaching, and I think the Human Rights Commission needs to be helped by institutions like the Interreligious Council, which actually deals with so many leaders who represent a section of members of the community. If they worked with the Interreligious Council to promote education through our structures in respect to creating awareness and so on, in respect to these rights, I think we could go a long way in changing the course of human rights in the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also believe there is a lot that needs to be done. And what do you think is the role of institutions where there is a basis for learning? Don't you think there should be a structure where people are taught their rights and freedoms, starting from that school setting?
If we have this patriotism channeled and there's a curriculum for it, I think that would be the good framework. Formerly, we had political education, which I was good at, and got a D1 in my O level. I was good at cram work, you know. So political education was good because it taught us about our country, it taught us about our past, also taught us about our future aspirations, and it taught us to love our country. So I think if we have a subject like that, unfortunately it was phased off. Even political science at the university has been interfered with. And I know the reasons why. I will not speak them here. But it's important that we have these subjects that create awareness about who we are, so that we are able to learn from our past, and so that we do not repeat our past, but also subjects that are able to teach us to celebrate the systems that we have in place. because sometimes we think, oh, the other people are way better. And yet we should be able to celebrate what Uganda is, how far we've come, what we've achieved as a country, where we are as a country. There are many things to celebrate as a country. So we need those subjects taught in schools and channeled through the curriculum to inculcate a certain line of discipline, a certain line of thought in respect to not just human rights, but nationalism and patriotism. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. And now as we wind up, what is your message what message do you have for the people out there regarding their rights and freedoms?
The message that I have is that we can't talk about human rights if people still go hungry. We can't talk about human rights if people cannot get basic needs. We can't talk about human rights if people can't sleep well. So I think let's first put this in order. Let's ensure that we have shelter. Government should ensure that people can access free education. Government should ensure that the government scholarships are accessed. There are also scholarships at State House are made to understand. But up to today, I keep on wondering, how do you get it? So we need to, we really need to make some of these things accessible to everyone. Ensure that, we have hospitals, and the hospitals are well equipped with medicine. But also the people who are manning these institutions on behalf of government should be able to do the right thing. Because if government makes a provision and we keep on abusing these things, then we make our lives worse. So there's a lot of need for responsibility. There is need for us to work together for the common good. There is need for us to put away our differences and begin to look at each other as brothers and sisters. Begin to work for the common good. Begin to work for the betterment of our country. If you have a contract, do it like you're doing it for your home and for your children. On behalf of government, you have a contract. Do standard work. Don't do things that will bring you into conflict. Things that will bring your work into question. Let us strive for excellence. Let us strive to do the best that we can. And if rights are violated, we can go to court and enforce those rights. Yeah. But let us first of all put down the key infrastructures to ensure that we are able to enjoy these rights. Let's have the schools, let's have the hospitals, let's have the good roads. Electricity, I'm happy now, electricity is back to government of Uganda. And we congratulate actually government for getting this whole thing out of Umeme. We hope that there will be transparency. We hope that the electricity sector, the cost of electricity will now reduce for domestic use, but also for business use. Since now it's in the hands of government, not people who are after profits. So we congratulate government upon getting back our electricity sector to UEDCL. Yes, thank you very much.
That's very, very important, and we really want to appreciate you so much for the insights that you've given us. Maybe in just a few seconds, if you can give out your very last remarks.
You can visit us at the Interreligious Council of Uganda. Our offices are in Mengo, and we are there on Sentema Road. You can come, get some literature from us. We have a lot of literature, but also you can come and learn and see what we are doing on a daily basis, interact with some of our key staff. We are engaged in a lot of things. There is going to be the Africa SDG Summit, and we want to encourage people to participate in Munyonyo. We are also going to participate. We have an interfaith dialogue, African interfaith dialogue on sustainable development goals. It is going to take place on the 8th of April. And we also have other activities coming. We are organizing the Family Festival that will be held in May. And we are going to have the National Youth Colloquium this time on oil and gas, and we'll be in Hoima. And then, of course, we'll have a dialogue on marriage, and then we'll have a dialogue on religious freedom, organized by the government of Uganda in partnership with the Interreligious Council and the Global Peace Foundation. So come and be part of what the Lord is doing through us. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Council John Osapir, who is the IRCU manager for legal advocacy. We really appreciate you for coming through every Wednesday here to give us this interesting and impactful information. Well, we cannot go past this hour. We really appreciate you for joining us through the entire 2 hours. And now we head out. We appreciate you. Please make use of every information that has been said out, but also you can make consultations to the Interreligious Council as he has guided. Now, see you again next Wednesday. We want to appreciate you. Have a lovely day.